on, I kind of asked him the question of like, what's the question? I think the exact words were, what's hindered your performance in the last 4 years you've been here? Which, in hindsight, is a pretty big question to ask the head coach, especially the guy.
Sure. Oftentimes when we're starting out in the fitness industry, we're told things like, you've got to find your niche, or you've got to niche down. And while that's not necessarily bad advice, I think there's a lot of merit and a lot of benefit to being a generalist early on. In many cases, you don't even know the type of people you like working with, or the environments you're best suited to thrive in until you've been exposed to a lot of different arenas. And this definitely applies to today's guest, Terrence TK Kennell. Over the past couple of years, his work has spanned from pro baseball to women's professional soccer to men's college basketball, and now a new job with the UFC. Working in all these areas has given him a broad set of experiences and helped him forge his unique approach to training. So in today's episode, we're going to look at some of the global principles necessary to be successful in sports performance and physical preparation. We're going to talk about annual planning and why you should be doing it in some form or fashion. We're going to talk about in-season training and some of the benefits you get from spending more time not only with your everyday athletes, but some of your younger and developing athletes as well. And last but not least, we're going to dive into one of my absolute favorite topics, which is tissue prep. And we're going to talk about not only the benefits, but why this is something that you absolutely need to be incorporating into your programs. Now, if you're a regular to the show, welcome back. As always, love and appreciate you. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm Mike Robertson, and this is the Physical Preparation Podcast. In this show, we take deep dives into the art and science of coaching, cueing, program design, business, and personal development. Basically anything to help you become a better trainer, coach, or rehab professional. Now, as someone that has worked with pro athletes from every major sport, I think it's helpful to see a wide range of body types, different movement strategies, and even compensation patterns to better understand the human body and how it works. Just like you'd make it a goal in your training program to have a big volume base before jumping into higher intensity work, I think that general work early on in your career can allow for a higher peak when you do decide to go all in on a given sport or career path. The bottom line is this: Terrence has had success in numerous sports and across various sporting cultures, which is not easy. So I really think you're going to love this episode. Now, before we dive in, I want to give you a quick recap of the week that was, let you know what is new in my neck of the woods, because, man, there's a lot going on here right now. Athletes are absolutely crushing it at the gym, as you'd expect. My NBA, G League, two-way level guys, everybody's out there. We've got mini camps, we've got individual workouts going on. So we got guys in and out, a little bit more chaotic than usual. Definitely not a bad thing. You want people to be interested in your athletes, but a lot going on. And Summer League is right around the corner. So if you're a basketball fan like me, you got basically like a 2 or 3 week break in between when the NBA finals finish up and when Summer League starts. So definitely excited, especially because I'm going to have 3, 4, maybe 5 different guys that I've worked with this summer that are playing in Summer League and that are out there competing for a job next year. So very excited to be watching them. This past weekend, Kennell had her end-of-year soccer tournament. As you may or may not know, I am her coach. So it has been an awesome year. Like, just a really awesome year because, number one, we have amazing girls on this team. But in the fall, we definitely exceeded expectations. I don't think people expected a lot out of us because I was new to this age group. We do not have one of these teams that's been well-formed and it's played together for 4 or 5 years. We had a whole mishmash of new girls that all came together this year. And in the fall, we won the championship. So, coming out in the spring, we had a big target on our back and faltered a little bit early. We didn't have a ton of practice time, ton of time to ramp up, but we got better as the season went on. Felt like really hit our stride in the tournament, won 2 big games, got ourselves into the championship, just couldn't get it done in that championship game. We went up against a really solid team. But man, just so proud of this group of girls. Very excited to watch them continue to grow and develop over the years. I don't know if I'm going to get to coach many of them in the future. So that is sad, but also exciting in a sense because I feel like I at least played some small part in their love of the sport, and hopefully they're going to continue to play and either age up or, if nothing else, potentially move up and move into a travel program and get more and more serious about the game. So just a great group of girls. Wish we could have gotten a W at the end, but all in all, I felt like we got absolutely everything out of this team. Super impressed with their development and their growth, and I'm really, really going to miss them. So soccer tournament's done. This weekend is like our last weekend of spring sports. So Cade's got his baseball tournament. He's absolutely been crushing it in baseball. It's fun to watch him. Guy can hit, man. Guy can hit. I told him the other day we got to work on defense a little bit, but man, the hitting, the throwing, the speed are all there, and he's loving baseball, so that's been great to watch. Kennell has her last track meet this week, and then, man, I got like a day or two next week, and then next Tuesday, head off to Slovenia. So excited, a little bit nervous. Haven't done any international travel since, 2017, 2018, whenever I went to Poland. So it's been a minute, but excited to go. I mean, the people in Slovenia are fantastic. Love Matej, his entire team there at Vigor just feels like family. So little nervous, little excited, a little leery of being gone for a week, just being away from the family, being away from my athletes, because there's such a good rhythm right now. But man, looking forward to it, and I know it's going to be an amazing event. So that's really all I have for this week. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to jump into this awesome new episode with my guy, TK. It seems like every day I talk to a young trainer or coach who is frustrated. Maybe they're frustrated with the results they're getting. Maybe they're frustrated because they don't have trusted resources to learn from. And maybe they're frustrated because they simply don't have enough clients and wonder how long they'll be able to stay in the industry. So if that sounds anything like you, I've got something that I know will help. My Complete Coach certification was created for trainers and coaches just like you, who are serious about the results they get and who know that becoming a better coach can directly translate to a bigger bottom line. This certification is going to take the last 20 years of my life's work and put it all into one massive course. In it, you'll learn how to use the R7 system to create seamless, integrated, and efficient programs for clients and athletes of all shapes and sizes. How to create the culture, environment, and relationships with everyone you train so you can get the absolute best results. And the exact progressions, regressions, and coaching cues I use in the gym, from squatting and deadlifting to pressing and pulling and everything in between. Of course, there's a ton more that I cover, but that should give you a pretty good idea of what the cert is all about. Now here's the thing, spots for the certification will only open twice per year for a limited time only. To get on the insiders list, just head over to CompleteCoachCertification.com. Again, CompleteCoachCertification.com, and then stay tuned for emails in the coming weeks. Thanks so much for your support, and I hope you'll pick up a copy of the Complete Coach Certification when it launches. Terrence, man, thanks so much for coming on the show here today. Actually, second time, if you're listening in, we had a little bit of an audio hiccup, but my guy sounds amazing now. So anyway, TK, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I gotta say, so really appreciate you having me on. It's a bit surreal for me in terms of my career. I always listen to your podcast a ton for all different guests you have, so it's awesome. So thanks again.
You're welcome.
Kind of been, I've had more sports than like tie-dye t-shirts. I was kind of joke about because I just had like worked in a bit of MMA and boxing, some basketball, soccer, rugby. Been lucky enough to go to a few different countries as well. A bit of an S&C nomad at times, for better or worse, depending on who you ask. Yeah. I spent some time in, like I said, rugby, soccer, a bit of tennis, basketball. Did my undergrad at Arkansas State. Did my postgraduate work at St. Mary's University over in London. Yeah. Between there, I went to Japan to work in professional rugby there. After that, and after the UK, went over to work for the Astros for 2 years, or two and a half years. I went time on the rehab side, went to minor league baseball, so I had lots of long bus rides. And, then from there, we worked in professional soccer, on the women's side, and NWSL. And, I loved that. Was an awesome experience, chance to be a lead as well. So I was director there. Yeah. There, I went to UMass, finished this past season up at UMass for men's basketball. It's just kind of our head there. And then now in like the SNC limbo stage of like trying to find a new role. But recently, just come out of that stage because now just signed everything over to work for the UFC at the SNC coordinator, so be based in Vegas at the UFC PI. So kind of bounced around a ton.
Yeah.
And so, which has been good in some ways. Like, I mean, sometimes I complain about it because it's just like constantly moving. But
Right.
The good part is that I've been a multitude of environments, some heavily resourced, some not so much. So it's kind of see spectrum of all being creative as well with like programming and opportunities and things.
Well, and it's like when you tell young kids to play a whole bunch of sports, right?
Yeah.
When you're a coach, like, hey, go like work with anybody, get a lot of different experiences, because ultimately if you do decide to specialize, you're going to have all these general experiences that you can draw from and learn from. So when you specialize, you're good to go, man. That's awesome.
100%. Like I always say that, like when I first decided to be SNC coach, I want to say I was like 19 or 20. It was 19. So I realized, I could get a like ACSM or NASM, like personal training certification, like in a weekend.
Yeah.
So I studied for a couple of weeks and like got that. And then based off, I remember the strength at the first school I was at, Mississippi College, and also a professor was like, you can go personal training like a local gym or whole boot camps. Like you're gonna get tons of reps coaching.
Yes.
I was like, oh yeah, it makes sense. He's like, yeah. I remember he said to me, look at coaching the same way you look at basketball, same way you look at lifting. It's like you don't just start off playing in the NBA. It's like it takes tons and tons of time and tons of reps. And so I was just coaching, people's dads, grandmothers, like whatever, whoever you were, I was gonna coach you. And I think at the gym I was at, it was like a commercial gym down in Mississippi. I want to say I was taking home like $18 an hour per client. And I was like, I just loved it. I just loved the fact I was wearing a t-shirt and shorts to work every day. It was great.
Yeah, that's awesome. So talk to me. You said at like 18, 19, you decided you wanted to be in this space, but like, talk to me about how you got started. Like, what was your background? How did you get started working out and just into the whole physical preparation side of things?
So I grew up in a military family. My mom served for 24 years. And so then because of that, I think, and she and her being super active, she like ran 10Ks. She ran 800 in college. And so then because of like always seeing like that side, like she'd always like a runner, she'd lift, do like boot camp classes or whatever. At one point she was a drill sergeant too.
Oh my.
For a couple of years. So like I literally had a drill sergeant parent. Sometimes to a point where even some like our punishment sometimes would be like, wall sits with your hands out in front of you.
Right.
Aaron crawls up a hill. Like, so she's like, I'm too tired to like ground you. So it's just and so my brother and I just be like in this torture chamber at times. It felt like, but that's probably early on, like super early. Then I always kind of played sports. Like basketball was always my main sport growing up. And then I would say like going to Mississippi College, I enjoyed our strength coach we had there. He's a great guy. I always had good conversations. I'm sure at times he probably thought I was annoying. So I'd ask him, why are we doing this?
Right.
That? And I'm just like, kid, shut up. Like, and then I had a professor as well. Originally I thought I wanted to be a sports management major. And so I thought I was going to be like a sports agent. Then I realized wearing a suit every day would be awful. I don't look good in them. I don't like them. So, and then switched over to exercise science and like kinesiology. And we had a professor who talked about the history of training. Like he trained himself too. And he used to be like an S&C coach. And so he kind of like lit the fire a bit between those two people of like, I want to do this. This seems like way more fun.
Right.
Like awesome. I enjoy training myself as well. So I was like, just do it. Don't go all the way in.
Yeah, I love it. So prior to the show, I always like to ask guests, what you're into, topic you're excited about, something you want to discuss. And one of the things that you mentioned was annual planning, which is also something that I happen to be super passionate about. So I was excited to talk about this today. So let's just start base level. For starters, where are you currently at with your annual programming and this idea of laying things out?
For me, the big piece is starting from the end point of whatever our end goal is, whether it be that first game of the season, whether you're as far as conference championship game, NCAA championship game, whatever, or if it's like in Boston, okay, we know we have a fight day here, let's work backwards from there. Mm-hmm. Kind of structuring our week to week, month to month, quarter to quarter of like, okay, what are our base things we kind of want to hit in this area based on how far we are away from wherever the event is.
Yep.
And then having some general principles that guide that from a big picture perspective, like zoom out like a 5,000 foot view, and then let's zoom in to, okay, in this month, these are kind of our progressions, regressions from a physical side, a technical side, a tactical side. These are things you want to hit. Okay, into maybe 6 weeks down the line, we want to try and go into these, then go into these. But also just having kind of a general plan, then we can be like, okay, we can now adjust as well if we need to. So if someone gets sick, we get COVID, we have to miss stuff, there's travel, something comes up because something always happens, right? So It's easier to have a plan B when you have a plan A to start with. I think I always think about. So I think for me, that's kind of where it always kind of stems from. So I think sometimes it can seem overwhelming with like annual plans. People think you have to be super prescriptive and write your entire program from a physical, technical, tactical side for like the next 12 months. It's like, no, it's like, but don't do that because it won't work. Like something's going to happen. Multiple things are going to happen. You're going to have to change something at some point. So it's have some general principles and ideas and adaptations you want to start with, and then fill in the blank as needed as it gets to the actual time.
Yeah, see, I love that because, it's weird the way you see these swings in our industry, right? So, like, when I was coming up, bro, if you didn't have, like, a full annual plan written out, like the next 12 months, down to the sets and reps and all that, you weren't really trying hard. And now you've got the opposite side where, like, the haters are like, oh, man, you can't plan and account for everything. And so they're kind of throwing this whole idea of annual planning under the bus. But I love the way you stated that because the goal isn't to have the sets and reps and all the details locked in when you're 6 months out, right? But to have a general idea as to where you'd like to be at a perfect place and time, like, I think that's really helpful.
100%. Just have like a useful roadmap.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily doesn't need to be like every single step. Like I remember the old like map quest.
Mm-hmm.
So I have like print out a map quest and I tell you right at this. It's like I know how to get out of my neighborhood. Like, like I don't need that much detail.
Right.
So it's like, I have to have a general view. Oh, okay, I need to get on this road, get on this interstate. We're going this direction. Like,
yes. Yeah. And again, you said it very eloquently. It's like it's way easier to have a plan B if you got a plan A to start from. And I think too often now people just kind of get into the mix of things and there is no plan A. So therefore, when it's time to like take a hard right or something changes, they're like, they have no clue what to do. And it's hard to be malleable or adaptable when you don't have something to build from, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like the ability to come up with things off the cuff is a great skill. Like you can never like diminish that as a coach. So we can be like, but sometimes like let's have like a plan, and then we can deviate from it as needed. But if we don't have to deviate from it, let's have a plan already.
Yeah.
way easier to do that because then also you can. I think it helps as well if we go back and like guest check and evaluate as well because if you don't have a plan, there's something to evaluate from in 4 weeks or into the week or whatever down the line because what did we do? I don't remember what we did. Like,
Exactly.
Came over that day. Well, why? Okay, well we did that on Monday. What did we do the Saturday before that? I don't know. I just came up with it.
Right. Absolutely. So, one topic that I feel like's garnered a lot of attention in recent years is this idea of in-season training. And like you've alluded to, you've been in rugby, you've been in baseball, you've been in soccer, you've been in basketball. So pulling from all those different sports that have different competition calendars and different rhythms to their training week, what's your current line of thinking with regards to training your in-season athletes?
I would say a big one. I like this approach. I think this approach would have been much more valuable in soccer. I mean, it would have been valuable in soccer too if I had the thought process then. Mm-hmm. Was that in basketball, which is this approach of like an optimization framework and like a development framework. So basically, and like the guys in the middle. So like the high minute players, it's like, you're playing 20 plus minutes a game. We need you to be as healthy and fresh for every single game because that's the determinant of winning for us. The inconsistent minute guys that are like 10 to 18 minutes, like some day they play 9 minutes, another day they play 0 minutes, next game they started. Yeah. So those guys, okay, you can probably sprinkle in a bit of extra work to keep you ready if needed, but also it's a plan for, okay, you maybe you didn't play yesterday, maybe you're playing on Saturday, didn't play on Tuesday. Well, let's put something in the middle just in case.
Yeah.
Whether it be extra lift and extra individual work. So like that was kind of how he was framing. So like guys who were inconsistent minute, we're kind of usually doing 3 lifts a week for the most part, and maybe like 1 or sometimes 2, but usually just 1 like individual skill session. And the low minute guys, I think there was an old like all blacks coach used to say the guys who just eat the food. And it's like, hey man, it's like, not to be mean, but you didn't play 2 weeks ago, you didn't play a month ago. Like, let's use this time as a time to development. So those guys be on a more development approach. So, hey, if we can get 3 to 4, or at least 3, the individual player development sessions on the court.
Yep.
That's perfect. If we can get 4 lifts in a week, that's great because you're probably not going to play.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like if you didn't play last month,
you're not magically going to find minutes, right? Unless somebody gets injured.
Yeah. So let's have a team falls off, and then the last one we got. Yeah. I think there was this book from this guy who used to play at Wake Forest. He called it like a 30-30 guy. 30-30-30 guy was like up by 30, down by 30, 30 seconds left in the game. You fall in their category. There's nothing wrong with that, but now it's like, let's not use these next 6 months of the season to kind of just
maintain.
Yeah, but it's like, what do you maintain? It's like, this is an extended off season for you.
Yes.
You can be a whole different player. By the time the spring, you can be a whole different player.
Yes.
Or a whole different athlete, things like that, because you can get 6 months of lots of extra basketball work on the court, and then lots of focused training because we're not losing 2 days to a game.
Dude, I love that. And it's so good that you say that, because I think a lot of times as an athlete, right, you're conditioned, you want to play. You want to compete, right? You want to be out there. So I think that's a great line of thinking as a coach and a way to sell it to keep these guys engaged and switched on. It's like, hey, look, man, for whatever reason, you're not getting minutes right now. Maybe you're young, maybe you're inexperienced, whatever. But hey, man, let's use this time. Let's lock in on your on-court development. Let's lock in on your physical development. Think about where you can be come the spring or next summer when we are competing for spots. Yeah. That's how you sell it to keep these guys switched on and engaged. And the guys that buy in, it's cool to see those transformations, right? You can do a lot in 6 months to a year.
Yeah, we had guys. I had one guy in particular is power forward who early in the season he was playing and then just kind of fell apart a little bit for him. And so he was kind of on this went from a high minute player for the first month and a half to pretty much non-playing. And I had the same talk I had with some of the other guys that were in that group as well. And we called it the Get Better Gang.
Yeah.
He PR on a split squat. I was on a 5 split squat each leg, and in season. But it was he's just lifting. He's lifting and doing extra work on the court, getting more shots up, working with assistant coaches, getting the managers to rebound for him and stuff like that, and just getting extra work on the court. But also, he's also lifting way more.
Right.
I remember we were playing. I want to say we were playing VCU, and we had a heavy lift that day, a lot of intensive jumps. A lot of heavy lower body work and some high repetition of upper body work. And then he got in the game for the last 14 minutes. I was like, ugh, I made a mistake. Yeah. but he didn't fall apart. He was fine. I played well in those 14 minutes. I played the whole last 14 minutes of the game against, I want to say it was VCU. So he got in the game. They called him to come in the game. And he's sitting he's so far on the bench. He's almost 2 seats away from me. They called me. I was like, shit. I lean on to our athletic trainer who sat next to me. I'm just like, we gotta keep our eye out here. I may have made a mistake. He goes, what happened? I was like, he had to lift an individual today. He's like, oh yeah, he did. And I was like, fingers crossed. Yeah. But he survived. Went through it, played well, and it was 14 minutes.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So this will make for a smooth transition here, because I realize this is a big question, but I'd love to hear about how you're integrating your tactical periodization with your in-season training. How are you merging all that to make this really cohesive, tightly packaged framework?
I would say, the biggest piece is the relationship my head coach and I had from I was a working relationship. Early on, I kind of asked him the question of what are the question? I think the exact words were, "What's hindered your performance in the last 4 years you've been here?" Which, in hindsight, is a pretty big question to ask the head coach.
Sure.
Sure. It's been hey, why have you struggled here? It's who's this guy? But so I asked him that kind of question, and he kind of came to the approach of a big piece has been guys getting injured, and he's telling me the nature of the injuries along with the AT. And it was all pretty much the same, a calf strain, Achilles tendinopathy, patella tendinopathy, the things that are pretty controllable for the most part.
Yeah.
Not completely
Yeah.
controllable, obviously, but like things you can kind of account for and kind of help prevent.
Right.
Um, and I was like, okay, well, here's this idea of come from that, from done in soccer and done in rugby, where we can kind of marry up some of our practices, like not just a traditional like vertical integration model of like it's a high day, it's a high, it's a low, but like how we can even from like a drill and space size and like density of the drill and intensities of the drill. And, oh, just because like hey, just because it's half court live is not a low day.
No. No.
Like
No.
But I think typically a lot of times basketball coaches, I think even probably a lot of S&C coaches assume that like half court is easy because now it's not covering as much ground. It's like you're hitting more people. There's less space. There's tons of more change direction. Like it's actually super stressful on the body.
Yes. Yes.
And so coming with that framework of, here's kind of roughly kind of spaces we can work in. Here's how we can do some of our drills as well. We can make them longer or shorter and shorten the rest, make it longer rest to determine what kind we want for the day. But also our guys who are playing, 20, 30 plus minutes a game, who we need to be as fresh as possible every game, maybe they don't need every rep in practice.
Yeah.
And that was when he kind of sat there and was like, he's like, yeah, actually, I can see, I can like kind of see your point. I was like, yeah, because if our starting point guard who averages 20 a game, if he's playing 38 minutes a game, he probably doesn't need a practice. He gets enough basketball.
Yeah.
And so we then kind of structured our teams because, typically in basketball practice, you have like your starters and like everybody else. And like your starters get tons of reps and everybody else gets to like rotate in because there's like 8 of them, right? So we basically flipped it. So like guys who are inconsistent or low playing guys, maybe 6 of them, but there's 8 or 9 of like the starter playing group. And even some of those guys aren't really guys who play a lot of minutes, but it's essentially a way to get we had pretty much 3 main players for sure that needed to be as fresh as possible every single game that help us win. So basically, it was so that those guys would get subbed in and out. So they may do 2 reps of like a drill or something like that, and then get subbed out.
Yeah.
And like it's just that way also as well because like they're in everything. Because I never want to be that guy who like he only does 40 minutes of practice, but it's like but we need him to do the whole 2 hours or whatever.
Right.
It's like oh no, but he's hit his training load for that day, so that's all he's doing. But in reality, it's like that gets way more pushback than like no, he did everything. He did a little bit less of everything.
Right.
And so I was kind of coach. So sometimes you see that. I think when it's done, not married up with the sport coaches, you kind of see that with like in field sports, like in soccer, sometimes even in football, where like they hit their 4K today, they're supposed to hit, so they're not taking out of practice. It's like but we've only done 3 drills.
Right.
We have all these other things that I need them to do from a tactical perspective or technical perspective. No, they hit 4K. iPad says it.
They're done.
And it's like if you lose that next game, it is now your fault.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, and one thing that I learned being in soccer, because I got not even a bird's eye view. I got like literally a sideline view for an entire year, and a lot of times people they hear small-sided games. And if you're unfamiliar with the term, it sounds like it would be easier, right? Oh, small-sided. Oh, so it's easier. Hell no. Like watch 11v11 in soccer. And not to say that it's not hard, but watch it practice and watch how much standing is going on, right? Yeah. Versus we would have days that were just brutal. It was like 2v2, small field. And the way the coaches would describe it is in full-sided 10-10, 11-11, you can hide, right? You can drift, you can hide. 2v2, there ain't no hiding, bro, because if you hide, you're getting scored on, your teammates yelling at your ass.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? And so that just gave me like this very clear representation of, okay, small-sided does not mean easy. And in many cases, small-sided is way more intense, right? Yeah. Depending on the construct of the game and how it's set up. So that's awesome, man.
Yeah, we're just stuff like, we're going to start, we have like 2v2 days or 3v3, like a small grid. You're just like, oh, man, this is brutal. So we kind of like, I think I use a bit of like kind of the Raymond Verheyen model, which I got from a good friend in Barone, where it had like his like strength day. So it's like, a small-sided day is like our strength day.
Yeah.
Like in day, big spaces, a bit less rest, speed day, more rest, more narrow spaces, but still very long.
Yep.
So that's very much just kind of that kind of idea. Small-sided is brutal.
Yeah, it really opened my eyes. So, okay, so on the flip side of that, I'm also a big believer, and I believe you are as well, that healthy, resilient athletes are built in the off season, right? It's not like somebody comes in season and they're banged up and they magically get healthy,
Yeah.
right? It's like this long battle to try and get somebody back. So when it comes to your off-season prep, what are some of your big rocks or the KPIs that you like to focus on?
For me, I just think going back to sports, I'd say with like basketball, a big piece is basketball players are so grossly undertrained and like from a weight room perspective. Like
Yeah.
I think hitting a lot of like kind of higher volume work, and high volume is kind of like people don't really like. People think I think high volume gets kind of it's a very bad rap. I think in the C currently for whatever reason, but it's more like it's not maybe not the volume necessarily that's hurting them. It's the lack of preparation to the volume.
Yeah.
So building that kind of robustness, like from a weight room perspective, doing like higher rep work. Like we did a lot of rest pauses, stole the Badger protocol from Aladdin Jovanovic. We did a lot of that, just a lot of time under tension work. They did a bit of like tissue remodeling kind of stuff, principles that I got from Jim Snyder at Wisconsin and Ray Eady at William and Mary. So those are kind of two people who I picked their brains like tissue remodeling. So working at big extended ranges, like long periods of time. And then after that, it was like higher volume work, so some like old school, like functional hypertrophy kind of work and stuff like that.
Yeah.
True like weights perspective. And then doing tons of extensive med ball and extensive jumping, like from multiple angles, short coupling and long coupling. Started off unweighted, then eventually added a bit of load through like med balls or like barbells or dumbbells and things like that and trap bars. And then kind of progressing that from a weight room side. The big piece of me is like doing some aerobic work, like that kind of base, not fun to do, very, very boring aerobic work. So taking guys like to like the rec center and doing like hopping in a spin room and just like, hey, we're all gonna work at this RPM range for the next 35 minutes.
Yeah.
It's gonna be boring.
Yeah.
And so those kind of the big pieces that you should hit kind of off season from a basketball perspective because of that like under training age. Ideally off feet for some of that aerobic stuff because it's been so much time on feet. As Nike said years ago, basketball never stops because it never does.
Right.
And so those times where we can hit some true like aerobic adaptations that don't involve beating your joints up is always nice too.
Mm-hmm.
Like key things for like on like a basketball side, but also even in a time in rugby, I spent a lot of off season, not as much focus on that true higher volume weight room work, but a lot of like baseline aerobic work. So like strength endurance kind of circuits. And like aerobic capacity runs of like 3, 4, 5 minutes. The guys just be miserable doing it because like it's just so boring.
Right.
It's like you'll thank me later.
Exactly. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Like I'm a huge believer. I love the spin bike for these guys. I feel like there's so many benefits. There's aerobic benefits, just pushing some blood through the knees. Like generally they just feel better when they come off.
Yeah.
Circuit day. I mean, the guys probably roll their eyes because a lot of times on Wednesdays it's circuit day. But like you said, we're dragging sleds, we're throwing medicine balls, we're doing the ropes. Just things to build that general work capacity. I love that. One thing you mentioned, and maybe I misheard, but I'm interested. You talked about like doing stuff at in range. Is that what you said? Just doing like a lot of like work, say maybe in the bottom of a lunge or a bottom of a squat. Is that what you're alluding to?
Yeah, so some of the principles I got from like a tissue remodeling of like just like fascia.
Yeah,
was working some big, long, extended ranges, and we worked with some isometrics for like 90 seconds to 2 minutes.
Oh my gosh!
Big lunge position, stuff like that. Make sure you're actually pushing your foot into the floor and like driving that foot back.
Yeah,
actually with tissue remodeling, and you just get guys in those ranges they never hit before.
Yes,
they never go through. And you see some of the struggle and the shakes happen. So that was kind of like our preparation period. So we'll probably want that for about 2 weeks. A lot of times we do that before the actual lift.
Oh.
It's basically like a warm up.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to hold this extended lunge or extended overhead position, like prone, stuff like that for next 90 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not fans of you at that point. That's for sure. No. Yeah, those are like the old school, if you're familiar with like the DB hammer, like extreme ISOs. Is it that kind of thing? Yeah. Those are miserable, dude. You're a mean person. Okay, so let's come back to this idea of high volume extensive stuff, because you're absolutely right. I think it gets vilified, right? Everybody wants intensity. They want to see the 60-inch box jump. But why do you feel like that stuff's so valuable? I mean, I couldn't agree more, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I think the general preparation period of like getting ready to be exposed to intensity work, I think is why it's very valuable away from like even like the weight room side. So I think in the weight room it naturally has to occur because you can fail. Like
Yeah.
as opposed to very clearly like, oh, it's like if you come in and try to squat 400 pounds, and you've never squatted 225, it's like good luck.
Right.
But I think when it comes to like the field, I think jumps and plyos, I think some of it, I think it's vilified because of the nature of sport practice. I think the sport practice tends to be like very, very high volume a lot of times. It tends to be where kind of guys break down. But I think you have to, in some regard, you're preparing athletes for the game, but you also need to prepare them a bit for camp as well. If they have some kind of camp where they do like football, where I've heard from friends who work in college football, like some of these massive spikes, like day one. First day of camp, we hit 9,000 yards.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Right. It's like, it's like that's only going to go up from there.
Right.
And so I think there's a level of tissue preparation, but for some of those higher, you never fully get to that extent, obviously. But I think from a tissue preparation standpoint, and I also think I call it a bit of like earning the right to do some of those high intensity work, and also your ability to repeat the high intensity works, the big piece. Like doing lactic work is great, but for day-to-day lactic adaptations, it takes a good volume of actual work to do. And to that we can repeat those outputs. Otherwise, it quickly becomes not alactic because you're dying.
Right.
So I think earning that right to handle those more alactic efforts, more high intensity efforts by doing a good amount of extensive work, whether it be tempo runs, aerobic capacity runs, general like aerobic fitness work, extensive jumps and plyos at short and long coupling, give you the ability to then repeat those high intensity days. So I would think I was think back to like even some of Charlie Francis' work of they're doing like 3 or 4 high days in a week at times. It's like, yeah, but their low days were 3K a tempo.
Right, exactly.
But they had built the volume and the tolerance up to be like, okay, I can sprint at 92% on a Monday, and I can do the same thing on a Wednesday. But it's because my ability to tolerate and recover because of my aerobic capacity it's just so valuable. Even like in baseball, we see there's a few research studies out there, a couple of organizations that have done it, where they actually had pitchers with heart rate monitors, and they'd see per pitch it'd be like 90+% of like their maximal heart rate in a pitch, but even between innings, and they just wanted to determine was helpful velocity throughout as the game went on, was the ability for the heart rate to recover between innings.
There you go.
And also the variability of time as well, because some innings are longer, some are shorter in that half inning.
Yeah.
So I think that piece of like being able to recover. Oh, okay, I threw 98 in the first inning. Now I'm in inning 6. Can I still throw 98, or am I throwing 85?
Exactly. Dude, that's so interesting. And now that you mention it, I had this flashback of Charlie Francis had this old like GPP video, and it's just like him taking people through GPP circuits. And like if you remember and you look at like the work that he did, like his low days would probably smash most like modern athletes, right? Because I mean, they were doing tempo runs, they were doing medicine ball work, they were doing thousands of reps of ab work. Like they were in such phenomenal shape. That's what allowed them to do that.
Yeah, 100%. Like look at like Boo Schetznader always talks about it too. Some like his work. Alvin Milius talked about with the guys when he was at the 49ers, guys doing like 500 med ball throws.
Yeah,
I think we built up to 280, 300, and guys were like, we got to lift after this. I was like, yeah, we got upper body.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, oh my God, I'm dying.
I love it, man. Okay, so one more question, and then we'll start to kind of wrap this up. But plyos and jump work is or are something that lots of people talk about. But I'm also not always convinced there's a ton of thought put into why they're doing it or how to do it for maximal effectiveness. And I know this is something you've been thinking a lot about lately, so I'd love to hear your thoughts. What can we do to better program our jump and plyo training?
I think the big part, some of it's like taking away the box jumps to that impact and landing. I think is so valuable from the RFD perspective, understanding loading, like tissue tolerance as well. And working on stretch shortening cycle, which is not going to get from like a traditional like box jump, of course. And I think adding another piece, coupling the horizontal and vertical component is just something I kind of learned from reading and talking to Matt Miskinis Watson on like Plus Plyos, I think on Instagram. Okay. So he talked about that of like marrying up your vertical and horizontal components of being like you can do repeat squat jumps, but like, you can travel forward as well.
Oh yeah.
And like, a lot of times you're like. And adding that component is like being really valuable from the stretch shortening cycle perspective, but also adding that then from a force force output point of view as well, and working in deep ranges.
Yep.
So like things that are very short coupling, find things that are long coupling, but even the long coupling being a deeper range as well, and learn how to produce force out of that kind of bottom position. Whether it be from split squat position, a just regular squat jump position, but understand you can still produce force. And produce force not as fast, obviously, from like a pogo or a short ankle, more hip and knee dominant. Yeah. And understand that you can produce force from there as well.
So, okay, see, I love this. And this is something I talk to especially my basketball players about all the time, is the worst thing that can happen is for you to get exposed to a force or a position on a court that you haven't seen in the gym. You know what I mean? And granted, we can't reproduce everything in the gym, but we can expose them to a lot of stuff in a pretty safe environment. So if they get into some funky position on the court, they've been there at least a little bit, and they're not going to explode when it happens, right?
I remember some I learned from working for Kier. I was in Japan. Kier, I followed like rugby strength coach on Instagram. And the infamous at times, but was that he used to say like the position you never get exposed to is the one that breaks you.
Yeah,
as we always say. So like we had some stuff that were like really deep in range single leg squat work that guys were doing with like a 2 kilo plate in their hand. But it was just like such a deep range that they basically almost struggle to push themselves out of. Yeah. And it's literally from the exposure of like you said, it's like, hey, let's see in a super controlled environment of the weight room. Let's not see the field.
Yeah, I love it, man. Okay, my guy, big question time. If you could alter the space-time continuum and give young Terrence Kennell one piece of advice, what would it be?
Ooh, one piece of advice. I would say, purely from a life and coaching perspective, don't put so much time and like focus onto coaching, like trying to build a career, that you hurt the relationships like family and friends, stuff like that going forward. Yeah, so I'll say it's miss. I think I missed too many events.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, and I think that's a common theme, right? A lot of us are. Well, I think most of the people, especially the ones that listen to this show, are very married to their career in a good way, right? Like they hear about people, they want to see them succeed, but also being able to take that step back and realize, like, hey, look, outside of this space, there's other people that are important to me, and they can't always play second fiddle, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, cool. All right. Last but not least, lightning round. So 4 fairly short questions. Your answer can be as long or short as you like. Cool? Okay. All right, number 1. What's your career highlight so far as a coach?
Ooh, career highlight was I had a player that I had in AA while I was at the Astros who eventually got called up to AAA. Got like I signed like a new contract or a bonus or whatever, and he sent me a video of his first house he ever bought.
Oh, wow.
His daughter said, "Oh, coach, highlight of my career, I think, so far."
Oh, dude, that
was like, made me tear up a little bit.
Oh, yeah, that's amazing, dude. That's amazing. Okay, number 2, you have experience in all sorts of different sporting environments. What's maybe 1 or 2 things that you learned across the way or in those different environments that's made you a better coach?
Be relentlessly open-minded. I say that's the number 1, and number 2 is learn to speak the language of that sport, because it gets you very, very far.
Yes.
Like language that's spoken in soccer is different language spoken in rugby versus language spoken in basketball, MMA, tennis, things like that. So I find that to be a big piece.
Yeah. And what is essentially the same thing can be said 5 different ways across 5 different sports.
Oh, 100%.
For sure. I love that.
Like, I was thinking, so like in baseball, they used to say if someone was like really elastic, they used to say twitchy. I was like, really twitchy. At first I was like, what does that mean, twitchy?
Yeah.
And then like someone was like, then my boss at the time was like, oh, it means they're basically like a really good athlete and they're like elastic. I was like, I've never heard that before. But then I started using it while I was working at baseball because it was something all the coaches understood.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to speak their lingo, right?
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, number 3. Speaking of our guy Kier, how do you deal with that guy on a daily basis?
I always go with Kier is that like he's one of my best friends. I've known him for 6 years now, 7 years.
Yeah.
He's always a straight shooter.
Yes.
Which I really appreciate in a person. I think he's also genuinely a very nice person too, and he just likes to have fun the bear because he thinks it's hilarious.
Yeah. I tell him all the time, like, I love his feed because I think he's hilarious. I think he's right. Like, 99% of the time. And the people that really get pissed off at him are the ones that are generally in his crosshairs in some way, shape, or form. So
Yeah, true. So I look into the mirror thing of like, oh yeah, this is
yeah, I'm mad because he's calling me out essentially.
yeah, 100%.
Okay, cool. Last but not least, number 4. What's next for Terrence Kennell?
Next, to be honest, moving to Vegas. I think I'll enjoy that. I ideally kind of want to be there for a while. I need to stay in one a little bit.
Yeah.
And then just work in the UFC. I think an aside goal, maybe that's not tradition related, is I want to buy a house in like 2 years.
Okay, there you go. Life goals, right?
Yeah, exactly. Life goals.
Good for you, man. Well, TK, it's been awesome catching up with you here today. Glad we got the audio cleared up because you sound amazing. Where can my listeners find out more about you and the awesome work that you're doing?
Rightly or wrongly, I'm on social media. Sometimes I do too much. So TK Biz Prep on Twitter, and then T Kennell Biz Prep on Instagram. So those are probably 2 biggest pieces. I love like talking training and stuff like that. So anybody feel free to shoot me a message or DM. I try to get back to you. I'm not super popular on either one, so like it's be back.
Yeah, well, and I'll say this too. Like, I love the IG feed. I love people that are showing like, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is why I do it. It's like kind of marrying the video with the caption. Like, that's what I want, right? So, I mean, you do a great job of that and explaining the rationale behind why you do things, because you're somebody I feel like if I'm going to watch one of your videos, I'm going to learn something. So,
quick disclaimer on my social media too, though. It's not always tons of training. Like, a lot of sometimes social media, it's just like funny videos I like.
Yeah.
Or like memes or animal videos. I love animals. I have 2 animals tattooed on me.
Yeah,
or
nothing wrong with that, man.
Yeah, so if you're coming purely for S&C information, I may not be the best follower.
Hey, man, that's me too. I got pictures of my dog sleeping on the couch, my kids doing crazy stuff. So, nah, man, it's all good. I like learning about the person too, right? Yeah. Not just the knowledge. So, again, TK, man, this was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show, my friend.
Oh, man, thank you again for having me. Really appreciate it.
All right, my friends, that does it for this week's episode with Terrence TK Kennell. Love this guy, man. I love the way he thinks. Reminds me of a younger, smarter version of myself. But just, it's really fun topics to chat about, right? I love talking about tissue prep, in-season training, off-season training, tactical periodization. I mean, these are all things that are near and dear to my heart, and it's been cool to see him, evolve from these different sports. Because I've followed TK for a while now. In his career, and it's fun to see, okay, in the baseball setting, in the soccer setting, in the basketball setting, and if you have these global principles, if you have these universal understandings of how to develop an athlete, I think it makes it way easier to plug and play and to move into a different sport, versus if you spend all your time just learning one sport when you're young, and then you got to go and learn a whole nother sport, it's a lot more challenging. So I think it should be all of our goals to understand some of these global principles that make a sound training program or a sound off-season or in-season training program. And then from there, you can niche down and you can get specific to whatever sport you're most passionate about. So again, really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, and you're not already subscribed, what are you waiting for, my friend? It takes literally 2 seconds out of your day. iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Play, Amazon Store, wherever you consume podcasts, go there right now. Smash that subscribe button so you know each and every week when a new episode drops. So, my friend, as always, thank you so much for your support. Love and appreciate you, and we'll be back next week with a new episode. Take care.